All right, thank you so much for staying with Daybreak. Let's get into the nitty-gritties of a certain matter that we've been talking about. So there's a sudden surge in reported teen pregnancies within Machakos County, which is really threatening to cut short the pursuit for education of vulnerable girls. About 4,000 school-going children have been impregnated since March. That is what the information that we have. This is not very different from last year because according to the United Nations Population Fund, that's UNFPA, a total of 28,932 girls aged between 10 and just 14 years were impregnated in 2019. Now, compare that to this year, there's a bit of a sharp increase. But we went out there to speak to the parents, the children out there to find out what's really going on. And this is what they had to say.
I think the government and the Minister of Education should go to all the schools and check the data. If the data is really true, then they should invent a way of curbing the teenage pregnancy.
4,000 of our children getting pregnant in our homes. My question is it because teachers are better than parents, or it is because parents have failed?
Kuhusu idadi hiyo ya wasichana 4,000 katika jimbo la Machakos, mimi naweza nikapinga, sitakataa, lakini naweza nikapinga kwamba ile idadi imeongezewa.
And if these children, these girls, can only be obedient and listen to what their parents are cautioning them, I think this number can be reduced.
I think the parents are not educating their children about what teen is about, and they are not being told how to behave and how to interact with people basically in this stage of their lives. And also there is no awareness that has been created for the teenagers to learn from.
It could be anywhere. It could be a guy from your church. It could be even your teacher. Like, so sadly, it could be someone you look up to as a father and someone who is supposed to be bringing you up, not messing up with your life. And it could be anyone. And the fact that it is anyone is the reason why you should actually take care of yourself more.
If the statistics are really true, I think it's because of influence. Like, you just can't be sitting at home, then you decide, today I want to get pregnant. No, it comes with influence.
Many a times they are out there. We don't know where they are. We are too busy making money. We are too busy wherever we are, and we have no time for our children. Therefore, as parents, we have a responsibility concerning this.
We will also task the chiefs. We will also take necessary measures on the chiefs, because that is the non-performance. Because we want a generation, and the chiefs are not caring. So I'll ask the chiefs through the media that we want you to take responsibility of any pregnancy in your area.
Mtoto yako bado hajamaliza shule, ni underage, amepata mimba, na tayari hata wewe unajua, wacha kuchai off, kuja tafadhali mpaka kwa police station, kila kitu ya booked, na utakuta kila kitu hata kama utaki ijulikane, itaenda pole, na hiyo kesi itaenda kotini, na mwenye hiyo vituko atastakiwa.
We were in a relationship, then I found myself pregnant. I came to tell him, then he alikubali, akasema atalea mtoto, hana shida. So I had to nikubali hiyo ball, nilee singetoa. Sasa wasichana, no advice tu mkue, yani mfocus na shule, mfocus on your life, mtie bidii shule na mweke wavulana kando.
So let's make heads and tails of this conversation. And joining me now is Wanjiru Kamanda. She's the Deputy Director, FIDA Kenya, and also Elizabeth Okumu, Program Manager, TICA, which is Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health, Kenya. Thank you so much for making time for us. And Okumu, I'll start with you. Were you surprised by these numbers?
I was a bit shocked. There was expectation that the numbers will go slightly high, but not as high as what we have experienced. So I was a bit shocked, yes.
And Wanjiru, does this make sense?
Not at all. Not at all. As an organization, we've already recorded quite a high number of sexual gender-based violence cases, including defilement. So it would only, go that there might also be a high number of cases of teen pregnancies arising, one, from the sexual abuse of children, defilement, incest, and additionally also to consensual relationships amongst adolescents themselves, Trevor, as you rightly mentioned, the trend, it's not new. We've had issues of teen pregnancies. We usually have a spike around school holidays time in April, August, and December. So because children have been home for longer this time round, they're exposed more to sexual abuse, defilement, incest, and there are also increased instances of consensual sexual relationship between adolescents that would lead now to the teen pregnancy. So it did not come as a shock, really.
So Wanjiru, what are the legal options for these teenagers, especially when nobody has really stepped forward to go to court?
Wonderful. For the sexual abuse cases where there is defilement and incest, the children are protected under the Sexual Offences Act. And their options are first to report to the police, and then the matters will be taken to court for the perpetrators to be charged before court. FIDA Kenya is offering free legal advice and legal aid. We've already taken up a number of defilement cases where teenagers around the country have gotten pregnant as a result of their pregnancies. So in instances of pregnancies arising from sexual abuse, FIDA Kenya and government institutions, including the police, are willing to investigate and charge, and the perpetrators are taken to court. However, Trevor, in instances of consensual relationships, I think what as a country we should do, what should happen is the prevention in terms of offering comprehensive sexual and reproductive health information for adolescents to enable them make informed choices.
Yeah, let me bring in now Okumu on this. Okumu, so what is the role of comprehensive sexuality education in all this?
So the role of comprehensive sexuality education, for example, is there's consensual sexual relationship between adolescents and youth. And we are hoping that when they are faced with that, when they're in that place to make a decision, they can make safe, healthy, and informed sexual choices. And this can only happen if they have information on reproductive health. So the role of comprehensive sexuality education is to provide these teenagers with information so that when they are in that stage and they need to make a healthy choice, they can make a healthy choice.
Okumu, and there's been a lot of controversy around the comprehensive sexuality education, mostly because there's a perception that it then allows abortion.
Yes, we've had a lot of myths and misconceptions around comprehensive sexuality education, but we will not just call it comprehensive sexuality education, but we need to add also age-appropriate and need-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education, in that there's something that should be taught to a 3-year-old, there's something that should be taught to a 4-year-old, there's something that should be taught to a 10-year-old, there's something that should be taught to a 14-year-old, depending on their ages and their needs. The controversy is that a lot of information is exposed to them. But a lot of information is exposed to them anyway, even without the comprehensive sexuality education. They are accessing internet. We don't know what they are accessing on the internet. Just recently, a parent called me and told me she found her 10-year-old watching pornographic material on the internet, and she didn't know how to go about it or how to even talk to him about it. So the need appropriate, the age appropriate is very important, in that with every stage and every knowledge that they gain from out there, from their peers, from the internet, there's a gatekeeper that actually is able to take them through this kind of knowledge that they're gaining, but also tell them what is true and what is healthy and what is not safe for them. For example, I will take us back to the olden days, and comprehensive sexuality education used to be even taught in the olden days, and this is to bust the myth that it's a Western agenda. For example, if you look at girls in the olden days, it reached a stage where you could not sleep in your mother's house. You were taken to your grandmother's house. This was for the sake of your grandmother to actually take you through a comprehensive sexuality education. In what do you know, what are you expected to know, and how will that information help you in your life in the future. And boys used to go through the same thing when they were put in age sets in different cultural settings. And this would help them also gain knowledge on their body changes, what is happening, how they should act on it, what they should expect, and how they should carry themselves across. So this comprehensive sexuality education is not about abortion. This is misinformation. Abortion can be part of it if need be, because abortion is even in the Constitution. There are instances where even a woman, leave alone, a girl can get this information today, but this information can be used later on, especially when things that are being mentioned in the Constitution, and it is the need of this woman to get that kind of service.
Yeah. Wanjiru, you had mentioned the issue of the legal options available for the underage children. What happens when there is purported consent? Because they're all underage. That should not be allowed, really. So what happens in that case?
I think the courts have been able to deal with the issue, and they realize that in some instances, what the children need is guidance and counseling. So the courts, in some instances, have made such decisions. There's, however, some gaps in the law where we've seen young boys being convicted for sexual acts that were consensual amongst themselves and their girlfriends. So there's that gap in the law. However, there are courts that have been innovative enough and just made decisions that what should happen is that both the girl and the boy should get some sexual, counseling, and also the girl to get support in terms of how to manage the pregnancy.
All right. So can the parents be held legally liable, Wanjiru?
No, they cannot, Trevor. And I think there is a gap in terms of our approach to the issue of teen pregnancies. I think as a country, we are so blinded with the aspect of morality concerning the issue. Yes, there is an aspect of morality where there is, there are clear institutions that should deal with the issue of morality, and that includes the church and other religious institutions, and also an aspect of parenting. However, the duty bearer on sexual and reproductive health rights is the state, it's the government. Because sexual reproductive health is a constitutional right under Article 43(1) of the Constitution. And it being a right, there is someone who bears the duty to ensure that adolescents, access the highest attainable standards of sexual and reproductive health, and that is the government. So it's actually the government that we should hold accountable for the increase of teen pregnancies during this time, and even the teen pregnancies that we've had previously. It being a duty bearer should by now have put in place measures, including offering comprehensive sexual and reproductive health, education and information, and also access to services, adolescent-friendly services for our teenagers and adolescents. As a country, I think whenever we've had a reproductive health bill before Parliament, based on, the issue of thinking that the whole thing is all about morality, we bury our heads in the sand. And we've had attempts before to pass a reproductive health bill that would encompass and have specific provisions on access to reproductive health services for adolescents, but it's been shot down severally. I'd like to applaud Senator Susan Kihika, who's brought a reproductive health bill 2019 that's before the Senate, and one of the provisions of the bill is the provision of comprehensive sexual reproductive information and access to services for adolescents.
Yeah.
Trevor, you mentioned the issue of abortions. I think actually it's the opposite that happens. Where there is lack of sexual and reproductive health education and services, teenagers will engage in consensual sex amongst themselves and they will get pregnant. But because of how we stigmatize, pregnancy before marriage, then out of, the shame, there is even at times churches that excommunicate, girls or women who become pregnant before they are married. Then because of that fear, the teenage girls will opt to get abortions. In most instances, those abortions will be undertaken in backstreet clinics, so they end up botched. And we have girls, getting serious health implications arising from the said abortions. And at times we even have cases of death. And the instances where a death are resulting from an abortion have been taken before court. Last year, the High Court, sitting at Nairobi, made a very good decision in a case that's referred to as the JMM case. In that instance, the girl was in her early teens. She got pregnant. The pregnancy was as a result of defilement. But because of the fear and perhaps lack of options on what she could do, the girl opted to have an abortion that was done poorly in very bad conditions. The girl ended up getting kidney complications and sepsis, and eventually she passed on. So when delivering its judgment last year, the court mentioned that specifically in instances of sexual violence like defilement, girls should have access to safe abortion care.
Okay.
So the opposite happens. When you do not offer comprehensive sexual and reproductive health education and services, we see a spike in teen pregnancies, and not just teen pregnancies. We also see a spike in sexually transmitted illness, diseases and infections amongst teenagers, both boys and girls.
Yeah. And Okumu, it is this morality issue that we are talking about. That's where the problem really is, because one of the biggest concerns has been, should underage children be given contraceptives?
Trevor, we bury our heads a lot in morality and pretend that things are not happening while we are very much aware that they are happening. And I want to speak about a study that we did, and it was on first sex experiences. And when we did this study, we actually issued a number of questionnaires to young people, to older people, just to know what was the first sex experience for this person? What was it like? Was it consensual? Did they get services? Were they, was it with a person the same age? Was it with a person older? And all those kind of questions. And what we realized from that study is that there was a lot, number one, there's a lot of defilements among these young people. And actually the average age was between 10 to 12 years old. That's where most of them had their first sexual experiences. And at 10 to 12, our parents still regard us as children. Like, really, a parent will not think that my daughter or my son is actually going through this, and maybe with a neighbor, we just saw maybe a pastor and all those kind of things. So then we realized that, and part of it was consensual, in that was consensual, not like conscious consent, but consensual in that it was with a peer and it was just spontaneous through the moment. And with comprehensive sexuality education, the girl and the boy really knows what to expect and really knows what decisions to make, and contraception, abstinence is part of contraception. When you talk about contraception, we are only thinking about pills, but also abstinence is part of contraception. Condoms are part of contraception. And I believe that if it's in a peer-to-peer consensual relationship and they've gone through all the necessary information that they need to have, and abstinence is not one of the contraceptive methods that they choose, I believe that an adolescent should be provided with an appropriate contraceptive method. Okay. And this is not just about morality. It's also about, look at infections, Trevor. Yeah. Look at the unplanned pregnancies that we are having. Look at, especially even the psychological trauma that this girl is going to have when they get this pregnancy. So I believe that some of the things is not really morality versus immorality. It's about safety of the girl, and especially because health is not just the mere absence of illnesses, but it's also the psychological well-being of this teenager.
All right. All right, Wanjiru, finally from you. So a parent is sitting at home somewhere in a village in Machakos. The child is pregnant. Where does she start?
I think the first point is offering support to the girl. It's not the end of her life that she's gotten pregnant at this point. There are also institutions that offer support to teen girls. They can perhaps reach out to us as FIDA Kenya and other CBOs working in the county, and also the county Department of Health for counseling, for the girl, because there's a lot of stigma even amongst peers for pregnancies. But first point is support the girl. It's not the end of her life that she's gotten pregnant, and she can always go back to school because there's uptake, after delivery, she can go back to school. So that's the first point. Support the girl. It's not the end of her life. So support her, and let's not victimize girls, because that's what pushes them now to procure abortions at any means. Yes, Trevor.
All right. Thanks for making time for us this morning. Elizabeth Okumu, Program Manager, TICA, that's Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health, Kenya, and also Wanjiru Kamanda, Deputy Director, FIDA, Kenya. Thank you so much. He says they're offering pro bono services for the mothers who may want to sue over the teenage pregnancies.